It's Tap In with EL&EM, and anger, frustration, and sadness has poured into the streets across the country over the grand jury's decision to only charge one of the three officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death. Now, it was only for firing a gun into the neighboring apartments. Actually, no one is being charged with the actual death of Breonna Taylor. This solidifies multiple people when they say that the criminal justice system is stacked against Black people. But the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron said, quote, "Criminal law is not meant to respond to every sorrow and grief." And he said this when announcing the decision. So
he need his ass whooped.
We want to break down everything that is going on, because even though this was a severe travesty, apparently no laws were being broken.
With us today, we have Mr. Michael Curls, criminal defense and civil rights attorney.
This conversation is being brought to you by Feel Free Media. I just kind of need you to break down to me what happened that no one was charged for the actual death of Breonna Taylor.
I think the problem with this case is that not many people understand the true weight of what needs to be shown in a criminal case. Most criminal defense lawyers knew early on that this case was going to end up somewhere like it is right now. I actually told my son a month ago, almost a little more than a month ago, when he was still angry about the George Floyd matter, and he was bringing up Breonna Taylor, and I was like, I don't feel good about this at all, because to find someone guilty of murder, you have to have premeditation and deliberation. The officers would have had to say, hey, let's go there and kill someone, whether they knew it was Breonna Taylor or not. And that's a very high standard. And I think that if the last few months had been spent outlining and explaining to people the difficulties that the case was going to have, so that people weren't hit with this complete shock and awe when they're like, whoa, how did this not happen? I have been preparing a lot of people for a long time, saying, hey, listen, if they do something in Kentucky, great, but I'm not holding my breath on that, because even if this had been in California, I think it would have been a very difficult case to try and get a murder charge on. I think the fact, and I'm just going off the common facts that as we know it, the minute that there was a shot fired from within that apartment. Now, we all understand that Mr. Walker, the boyfriend, thought that someone was breaking in. So he armed himself and fired a shot accordingly. There's nothing wrong with what he did, and I hope that they've dropped the charges against him. But the minute that shot is fired and it hit a cop, we've all seen movies, we've all seen the story. When a cop is fired upon, then it's like the full armada of law enforcement is firing in return. I mean, the kid that got shot in the grandmother's backyard got shot 20-something times, and he was holding a cell phone.
Absolutely.
Imagine. So you see what I'm saying? I think everyone kind of got caught up in the political nature of it, and trying to figure out how can we appease this set of people while at the same time, not completely selling ourselves out to this set of people. If the attorney general had decided we're going to charge all these three officers with negligent homicide or second degree murder or whatever the applicable terms in Kentucky would be, then the other side would be up in arms saying, hey, these were officers doing their job. Whether they were doing it in a haphazard way, whether they were given misinformation, is irrelevant to a charge of murder. Murder was never, I don't think there was ever a scenario under which murder charges would have been brought or convicted on. I think that that's the reality. And a lot of people, because they weren't given an opportunity to understand what was going on and the depths of the law to make things so clear cut as they ended up being by the Attorney General, they should have spent time explaining to people the nuance of this type of case.
Yes, indeed. I have a friend who's actually a lawyer down in Kentucky, and we've been talking about everything in a group chat. And it looks like the family's attorney, Miss Lanita Baker, said, we don't want a murder indictment returned in the likelihood of getting a jury conviction on a murder is a long shot, like you're saying. So they're saying we want them to be charged with what a jury, based on the evidence, what they have and what a jury was going to convict them on. So this one time, the actual charges that the cop was convicted on, the one time, is it called one time murder charges or?
No, wanton negligence or disregard in the firing of his weapon. And the reason they're saying it's wanton disregard because he's shooting up one apartment, but he's shooting up another one as well.
Exactly.
It's not that. I mean, and I think I don't envy the position that the Attorney General was in because, you know, they kind of hot potatoed it to the black guy running things and like, okay, whenever you decide, you know, you'll live with the consequences.
Absolutely.
It was kind of a cowardly way of dealing with it, as I thought. The law enforcement, the district attorney's office that was in Louisville should have handled it in the first instance so they could determine if there was sufficient. And if it wasn't enough, then you can go the attorney general route. But to start off with the attorney general and just say, okay, whatever you decide we're going to roll with, it just seemed a little, unnecessary in terms of how they chose to deal with it.
Was it that they went for the charges for murder? Was it the wrong charge to try?
I don't think anytime, and this is just from 30 years of doing this, anytime law enforcement is fired upon, you're not going to get them convicted or charged for returning fire. We may say that their returning fire was excessive, but that doesn't make a murder charge. You have to desire that if they came into place and nobody fired anything and they just start blasting, that's a whole different scenario. Once that gun is fired by Mr. Walker, all bets are off. And we've seen it in every scenario imaginable. When someone fires at cops, it's like every cop that has a gun is firing on that one individual. I think it was too political in how they chose to deal with it. The real charges that I would have liked the officers to have stood trial for were for conspiracy in not giving accurate information. What ends up happening, and I have very strong opinions about how law enforcement do their job, but it's going to be let's figure out what our story is. Instead of this officer saying, oh, this is what I knew and this is what I knew, you'll never see officers breaking ranks. They don't do that. So it's kind of let's decide what happened, and then that's our story. So that's why you have back and forth issues because the guy that supposedly was the subject matter of the warrant, evidence is that they knew he was at another location at the time that they served this warrant, because they served two warrants simultaneously. So if they knew that guy was over there, why were they busting in the door, which was the basis for the no-knock warrant? The no-knock warrant says, hey, you can bust right in without knocking on the door because the person that you're looking for in the warrant is a violent or a serious criminal. Someone that we have concerns that an officer going in the light of day and just knocking on the door say, hey, we got a warrant, is going to get shot. So the circumstances that created the no-knock warrant, they already knew that guy was someplace else.
So why aren't they being held accountable for going into the wrong place?
And not only that, the time they went at the crack of morning. You get what I'm saying?
That's what a no-knock warrant is. A no-knock warrant is to give the officers the element of surprise.
Absolutely. But my thing is, if the officers were in the wrong place to start off before anybody got shot, they went into the wrong place and received gunfire. Why aren't they being held accountable for making a mistake in the first place?
Well, here's I don't necessarily agree that they went in the wrong place. When they were serving the warrant, and this is what law enforcement does, they try and syncopate so that they're serving the same warrant at the same time. So while they're going in the warrant on Ellis Street or whatever the first warrant where the guy actually was, they're also going to a place where they said he had packages delivered. So they're trying to hit everything at the same time because they don't want if they go in one place and they arrest people and somebody runs, they're going to tell the people in the other place, hey, the cops are on us, and then they get rid of everything at the other place. So they execute warrants at the same time. But the problem is, if they knew that the person that was perceived as the violence behind the no-knock warrant was someplace else, then they should have dealt with that differently. You don't, even if they had, knocked, I mean, you've got so many different versions of whether they knocked or they didn't knock, and whether Breonna Taylor was asleep, and all of those facts are still being flushed out.
And if these people are trained to have guns and shoot, if her boyfriend shot, why isn't her boyfriend? Why didn't they shoot her boyfriend? Why did they shoot her? I think they, and I don't think it was that they chose to shoot her versus shooting him. It's just the reckless nature of what law enforcement does whenever they shoot. That's my thing. If you're trained to be precise with your gun, you're trained to be a cop, right? If fire is coming your way, you're supposed to accurately return fire, correct? This is your job. So if they say the boyfriend shot at them, how are they accurate? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. Like, we're passing the buck on everything, and nobody's being held accountable for making a mistake. They were in the wrong place to begin with, and it's all these, it's one time we shot in the wrong place and all that. You shouldn't have been in that place shooting anyway, and you were shooting at the wrong target to begin with. So it's like, I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense to me. Legally, it doesn't make sense.
My understanding is that she was shot either from behind a wall, or she was somewhere in the. See, the thing about bullets is they don't know who they're going for.
Right.
So when cops are under fire, anything moving is going to get shot, and they're going to always rely back on their qualified immunity, that they had a reasonable belief that their lives were in danger. And that shot being fired by the boyfriend gave all the qualified immunity that the law enforcement need to return fire. And is it messed up that she gets caught basically in the crossfire, but it wouldn't have mattered who was there. It's my understanding that the officers were of the belief that she did not have that there were no children present. And the fact that they were perceived that she would be there alone or with another adult, shots are going to get fired. And I don't agree with it. I don't like it, but I've dealt with enough civil rights cases to know that all they have to do is explain a reasonable version of why they were afraid for their safety. Let me give an example. Let's say they went in and boom, knocked the door off, and the boyfriend pulled out a screwdriver or a knife. If they pop, lit up, then you're going to have a different scenario. If there's something where law enforcement is not actually realistically in danger for their life, but the minute he shot that gun, because I didn't know the full facts at first, but when I said, wait a minute, a boyfriend that was inside shot at the officers, it's like, okay. And that's because that's how the laws are written.
If I'm in the shoes of the boyfriend, if somebody kicks in my door, am I not allowed to defend my house? I don't know that these are cops coming in my house.
Well, and again, that's one of the facts that is up for debate as to first they said it was a no knock warrant. Then they when they were interviewed afterwards said that they knocked.
Exactly. So my whole thing is, does it matter if they announce themselves or not?
I wouldn't put a lot of stock in it one way or the other, but what it does show is how law enforcement can have a revisionist history of what actually happened. So it was a no knock warrant, but then they come in and they realize that the person they're looking for isn't there. Then they were courteous. No, we actually knocked first before we came in. But then there are facts that suggest, because the boyfriend said that he was reacting to the pounding on the door.
Right.
Okay. If there was pounding on the door, then they didn't breach as a no-knock warrant would require. You see what I'm saying? If he had time to boom, boom, somebody's there, react, grab my gun. Who is it? Who is it? There are statements where allegedly the boyfriend said, who is it? And as he's coming to see who it is, boom, then the door gets knocked down and he fires thinking people had broken his house, not knowing that those were cops. It's really an unfortunate convergence of someone protecting their home and someone doing their job.
Right.
Now, I'm not agreeing that they did their job as best as they should, but when we're talking about charging someone with murder, these were not the facts for it. I would have much rather the Attorney General of Kentucky focus on all we knocked. No, we didn't knock. They pulled a gun. No, they didn't. It's all the back and forth, the lying that law enforcement oftentimes do to protect each other. And that's what.
Don't they supposed to have body cams on anyway?
Okay.
Well, and that's an example of what I'm saying. So they're saying we're serving a no-knock, we're serving a search warrant, and in serving a search warrant, we would not normally have body cams on. I'm sick to everything that law enforcement, that whenever there's something like this happens,
Right.
Nobody has their body cam.
And it's not a coincidence now. It's like, come on, man. It's like police. Maybe this case we couldn't get these people convicted, and we kind of felt like they wasn't gonna get convicted because there's never no accountability. But how do we take the stance to where police don't have immunity? If I go to my job and mess up on my job, I'm gonna get fired from my job. If I kill somebody on my job, I'm going to jail. But they can go to work and actually mess up and kill somebody and just say, "Whoops, my bad," and go back to work. How can we fix that? Because that doesn't make any sense. No job in America that you can go to work and kill somebody and then go to work tomorrow.
People don't understand because they hear people say how important voting is. Voting is what people need to do, and here's why. Qualified immunity is a law. It says if law enforcement can reasonably articulate their reasons for their conduct, then they're qualified immune from that.
Wow.
Okay? So qualified immunity is it's a law in California. It's a law in Kentucky. It's a law all over the place because what the other side, what people often rely on is people to see something like this happen and then get mad at the system and then they don't vote. Well, if you don't vote, the people that make qualified immunity a law in the first place are the people that are going to prevail. Voting is really the only way you're going to change the law. You can protest and picket all you want, but if you want the books to change, the law to say qualified immunity is not the state of the law. For example, district attorney has absolute immunity. So let's put that in context. We all know about the Central Park Five, right?
Absolute immunity.
You saw about that. What did the district attorney suffer anything from that? No. Absolutely not. Why? Absolute immunity.
That sounds ridiculous to say.
It sounds ridiculous, but that is the law. That is the state of the law. So when people say, what can we do? You got to change the laws. You can't change the laws if we don't vote because the people that wanted qualified immunity, they voted.
So how do we change it? If qualified immunity on the ballot, or does it take a politician to come in and say, hey, we're going to change these amendments that are in here? How do we as people, how do we change that? How do we do that? Is that on the governor to uphold qualified immunity, or who do we look at?
Because we don't know.
It's on the state legislature. It's on Congress. It's on the people who are in a position to change laws, but they don't want to change that law. And I understand to a certain degree that they don't want every time a cop deals with something that he's got to do. I get that you don't want to have everybody in this job every time they make a left turn or do something that they're facing a lawsuit or going to jail. But this concept of qualified immunity is what has been a get out of jail free. It's like a golden ticket. It's like a Willy Wonka golden ticket. Cop, I had a case in LA, a gentleman named Kenny Wallenstein, and the cop shot him in the back while riding a motorcycle. He was on a motorcycle. The kid was carrying guns because he had just got out of a car that the police were going to stop. And the car took off, and instead of the cop taking off with the car, he followed the kid that was walking through the gas station. Kenny Watkins, I'm sorry, is his name, Kenny Watkins. And then the cop chirped his motorcycle. The kid took off running. The cop rolled up behind and shot him in the back.
What?
But he testified that as this kid is running full speed one direction, he was able to turn around and point his gun, and the officer was able to stop his motorcycle, pull his gun out, aim, fire 2 shots, shoot him in the back before the kid ever got a shot off. The way the law is right now, all an officer needs to do is be able to justify what he did.
Right. And it's just your word against their word. And when we go to court, half the time the judge is already on their side, so it really don't matter. So it's
but this goes back to the voting thing, and here's why. Most people don't like Trump, and they ask, well, how could all these Republicans support him? I know we didn't go there, but let me explain it to you. The reason the Republicans support him is because Trump has hijacked an entire branch of government. Yeah. You got 3 branches of government in the Constitution. You got the executive, you got the legislative, which is Congress, and you have the judiciary.
Yeah.
Trump he's put more conservative judges on the bench. So when you need someone to decide if this should go to the person that shot it to the cop, You see how that's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Now, is there a difference between the grand jury and a regular jury?
A grand jury is when is a group of people who serve a period of time. They're not on one case. Let's say the grand jury has been convened for a month. They'll hear every case that is brought to the grand jury in that time frame. Here's where the grand jury is kind of a bogus concept in this respect.
Mm-hmm.
If the district attorney was taking a case about a big name drug dealer to the grand jury, he'd put on evidence, and the district attorney would put on evidence to show that drug dealer did this, and grand jury, we think this person should be convicted. That's how the district attorney approaches the grand jury when the criminal is a defendant. When the criminal in question is a cop, the grand jury puts out all the evidence to show how he didn't do anything wrong.
Oh.
Do you see what I'm saying? They say, well, officer, did you do this? Oh, okay. And they basically are presenting the case to the grand jury to show that, well, this case isn't as strong as we could. And that's why you keep getting these grand jury results that basically never put anybody in the crosshairs of law enforcement or of criminal charges.
And if these cops know they have immunity like this, why would they have the incentive to stop acting the way they act? Like, how do you change any of this? Like, it seems like, for me as a black man and even a black woman, based on what we're dealing with Breonna Taylor, you just feel like you can be doing the right thing and something can happen to you and you can't do anything about it. Like, I feel like my hands are tied and the cops can kick in my door and do whatever they want to me. I can't defend myself. And if I do, they're going to charge me. It's just like, what am I supposed to do?
It goes back, everything goes back to voting. And I'm not saying that in a general sense. You have to vote the people out that are making laws that oppress you. It makes, when we as black people sit at home and don't vote, then other folks go and vote and the laws that they want become the law of the land.
Right.
That's the reality of it. Black folks should be voting, every person that is of age should be voting because that's the only way the laws will change. And if the laws don't change, the people don't change. And that therein lies the problem. Because these are laws that have been in place that have been fortified by things like qualified immunity for law enforcement, absolute immunity for district attorneys. So there are no consequences in the system for when you do wrong. It's like you do wrong, you move on. Well, let's go on to the next thing. There's never any looking back to see what happened here and how can we fix that. Because we as black people oftentimes get so caught up in being angry, we miss the opportunity to really change things.
A lot of people are asking, if the cops did nothing wrong, why did the city give Breonna Taylor's family millions of dollars?
Well, they were hoping that would appease folks. They were hoping that if let's see if and the timing of it is very concerning. That just before the results of the grand jury were to come out, we gave $12 million to the family. Isn't that nice of us? We gave her money. Okay, let's move on. Nothing else to see here.
Right.
Yeah, so they figured, wow, let's throw this money and maybe everybody will be so excited that we paid off that they'll forget that we're not going to charge these cops with anything. If the cops did nothing wrong, there's no way. I've done a lot of cases. I have never had the city or the county put up millions of dollars on a case that there was nothing that happened to the cops. They're going to make you fight for that million or 12 million or whatever it is. They're not just going to roll over and write a check. They were trying to appease black folks in hopes that they say, oh, wow, they gave her a lot of money. Oh, girl, you got over. Oh, family, it's okay now. No, it's not okay. This wasn't about money. And a lot of people didn't understand that.
If she didn't shoot and the neighbors didn't shoot, why is no one held responsible? Because it seems like the neighbors, and because of sloppy shooting, that's what they're being held accountable for.
Yeah. They were not going to charge those cops with anything related to that particular unit, but they wanted to charge them with something. What can we charge them with? What can we do to try and settle this powder keg? Okay, we'll give her a bunch of money. We'll charge the cops with reckless shooting into another unit, and let's hope that suffices and we can get out of this. They were never going to charge those cops with murder. Never.
Do you think that the cop that actually got charged, I know that each count carries 5 years, will he even serve a year?
Not a day. I don't think he'll serve a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
We still, when all is said and done, and a lot depends on who wins the election. Because if the election is won, if the same things stay in place, he won't serve a day. If things change and people think, okay, well, we might have to, maybe they'll create some scenario. He'll lose his job. He'll be on probation. He'll plead to something. He'll get house arrest. But he's not charged with anything other than being reckless. He's not charged with hurting anyone. It'll be his first offense. He's not going to serve a day. Just like I told my son was as bad as you are. What I've said, I'm like, this cop ain't going to serve a day.
Because essentially what it's teaching cops is if you kick somebody door in and you kill him, make sure you put all the bullets in them. Don't shoot no bullets in nobody else's house. This is the only lesson that the cops are getting from this. If you kill somebody, make sure you put every bullet inside of them. Don't shoot nobody else's house. That's the only lesson they're getting from this.
You don't see a lot of people living through encounters with law enforcement's guns.
No, you don't.
You don't see, yeah, because see, if the person is dead, then there's only one side of the story. I can say all kind of stuff if everyone that would have said something different is dead. So, I mean, there's no justice in that particular scenario, but I don't think that law enforcement understands that they have the support of the general public. They have the support of the laws. So they're not really afraid of. The only thing that made law enforcement afraid was the rioting of the angry people. Yeah. That's and then the officers that unfortunately got shot in Louisville recently. Yeah, they don't fear any reprisals from this because for 100 years before this, the cops hadn't gotten any reprisal. Cops shoot, and I looked at this statistic recently. Police officers shoot 1,000 people a year. Only 121 officers have ever faced charges for it, and 44 cops have been convicted. 1,000 people a year are shot and killed by law enforcement. Okay, so the percentages are on the cop side, and always have been. That's why when you see, and so you have to understand what they also know is as soon as people get mad about the shooting, what happens? A whole bunch of other people get mad who support law enforcement.
It's ridiculous, and it's like, how can you ever reform something if you have a nation of people who don't feel like nothing's wrong with it? It's like we the only people saying is messed up, and everybody else is like the cops are great, and they're like, hold up, bro, like what do you mean? It's crazy. It's I'm numb, man. I'm mind blown. I don't know what to do. I just hope they don't come to my house.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same thing that I gave my son the what we call the "don't be dead right" speech. It's like if you alone with cops, don't be talking about your rights. Yeah, I don't want you to be on nobody's T-shirt. This is how you deal with it. Put your left hand out the window. Put your right hand on the wheel. Put your wallet on the dashboard. Open your damn glove compartment so you don't have to deal with that. That's the speech you got to give your kids so they understand. Don't come in here. Wait a minute. I got rights. I know. Bam, bam. Then you gone. All you got to do is look at Sandra Bland.
Well, I'm tired of. That's another conversation, man. I feel like our parents have been teaching us to tuck our tails for years. But on the other side, they'll never tell their kids to do that. And I'm tired of having to, just to try to survive. And it's like, we can do that and still get killed. So why are we teaching our kids to do that? When they not teaching their kids to do that?
Because you want them to come home.
But you still might not come home.
So, yeah, but I'm going to play the odds. If my son is getting along with the cop on the side of the road versus standing over there like a militant, screaming for his rights, I don't want him doing that. I've seen this system too long. For too many times, and too many kids don't come home asserting their rights.
How do we change the system? Because we can tell our kids to change, but they still getting killed. We can tell our kids to do the right thing, and they still getting killed. So how do we address the system? Because I'm tired of having I don't have no kids, but I don't want to send my son out in the world scared.
I understand what you're saying. Every answer comes right back to voting. And I'm not saying it in some general sense. If people vote, then you put people in that have the laws that you want them to uphold.
Absolutely.
And this is the season more than any where people should be voting, bring as many folks as they can to vote. I used to coach. I've talked to most of the kids I've coached. I've talked to parents I know. They say, listen, you got to get out and vote because nothing else is going to change it until people are in position to change the laws. It's the laws that are causing these problems. It's the laws that have supported law enforcement. It's the laws that supported Jim Crow wasn't a feeling. Jim Crow laws.
It was legal. That's real.
It was legal.
That's a fact.
Okay. If you don't change the laws, nothing is going to change. You can shout and burn the whole city down all over the country, but if you do not change the laws, nothing is going to change.
So it's not just voting, but it's actually following through with those laws as well, because we can vote and they don't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and especially with the Republican-led assault on the judiciary, you have to understand the people on a federal level, the people that are making decisions about the laws are judges. Federal judges have life tenure. Okay, that means they don't run for office. They don't have opponents. As long as they don't do something completely outrageous, they keep those jobs until they die. So that's why Trump has been flooding the judiciary with all these ultra-conservative judges. And that's why the other Republicans are just standing back saying, we don't particularly like the guy, but look at what's happening on this team. We're getting everything we want in the judicial realm. You see what I'm saying? Let me just take it back a step. The only reason George W. Bush was president is because there were 5 conservative judges on the Supreme Court who didn't want to hear the thing about the hanging chads in Florida. They wouldn't even hear the case about it. If there had been 5 liberal or progressive judges on the Supreme Court, then he would never have been president. It's that serious. And most people don't think of the judiciary because it's a silent branch of government. They don't have commercials on television. They don't run for office. They don't do interviews. You don't hear anything from the judge. But when they're interpreting the laws, they're interpreting them very conservatively. And that's where the problem is.
All in all, what would you have to say to the people to kind of advise them how to move forward? Because unfortunately, so many people are very angry, and displaced anger comes out in different ways. And so when we feel like, well, nothing is going to happen, even voting, I know some people are like, well, yeah, voting, cool, that's in November, but when is the law going to change? And so people were talking about defunding the police, as well as police reform. Does that do anything?
No. I think telling people anything that is just a feel-good kind of stopgap measure, that's just kind of, that's like giving the poor bread in the French Revolution. Here, let them eat this. Here, eat this and go away. That's what that is. We don't want the laws to change, so take this and take that, and we'll give you these little consolations, and we'll throw a big party in the park and have people go. I mean, and that's why I'm pressing so hard, because we have gone for the okie doke for way too long. Mm-hmm. People are thinking, oh, well, can we do this and can we do that? If you don't change the laws itself, the person in control makes the laws. Okay, we have mortgaged our opportunity to be in control because we don't vote unless Obama's running for president. 80% of the NBA, after all this stuff, 80% of the NBA 2 weeks ago was not registered to vote.
Crazy.
And so when people are distracted away from voting, you're missing the road you're supposed to be on. Okay, so if they say, okay, well, we're going all this defund the police, what does that really mean? Who's going to defund them? The people that are running things?
They're not going to do it.
Not going to happen.
They won't even charge the police when they shoot somebody. What makes you think they're going to defund the police? Don't even make sense.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's like, this is the road we need to be on. There's a whole lot of exits that they're trying to get us to take. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll do this and we'll do that, and you don't have to vote. Just do it. And that's why they're making. Anytime somebody is working as hard as the Republican Party is to suppress your right to vote, that lets you know what road you're supposed to be on.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? They're not suppressing your right to go to the store or your right to, eat at a lunch counter. They are trying to suppress your right to vote. Yeah. And that's where the power lies. And so that I don't want you to think that I'm here for the Democratic Party or anything like that, because I'm not. But I've been in this game way too long to think that anything other than voting is going to change anything. And everybody has a vote. If you use it, it counts. If you don't use it, it gets counted for you. Yeah. Okay. So every person that doesn't vote because they mad, that means the other side's vote that voted is one up on you. Exactly. While we being mad and want to defund is good, but you ain't gonna defund the police unless you get enough people that follow your principles,
exactly,
that follow your ideology. And if they aren't the people making the law, you can scream all you want.
Exactly. Unless you have policymakers that unless you have to put policymakers in position that reflects your ideologies as a citizens. And until you have that in office, screaming defund the police and marching and all that, it don't matter because they don't see that. They don't share your ideology. So you have to vote to get those type of people in office so they can hear what you're talking about.
And not only that, I feel like city councils are very important as well. My mom was actually on the city council, and so I really learned how those entities on a lower level are just as important as it is on a bigger level as well.
Absolutely. The mistake that a lot of people make is, we'll vote for president. They voted for Obama, and then they got mad and didn't vote in the midterm election, and that's where all the inroads were made. That's where the Democratic Senate flipped to a Republican Senate. Yeah. Everybody voted the first election, but in the midterms, when they wasn't voting for president, when they needed to be voting for their Congress people, when they needed to be voting for city council, they weren't there. Yeah. And so what happened is the people that voted, what they want comes into play. Yeah. The rules that they want happen. I mean, we still vote at a frighteningly low percentage as Black people. And we get easily distracted. When we start talking about voting, people start throwing other things at us. Oh, here this. Hey, let's focus on this. Hey, let's go protest. Every protest that they had should have had a voter registration component to it. That is the one thing that I've been frustrated about, and whether it's Black Lives Matter or Antifa, all these different movements, is they're not registering all these angry people to vote. Exactly. If all those people if everyone that protested voted, then things would change. Yeah. Because the people that voted the other way would be out of office. Yeah. And the people that are going to do what you voted for them to do, they're going to be running things. But we can't keep the voting concept moving forward. We voted for Obama and everybody voted. We was all happy and everything. And then 2 years later, half the same people did not vote. Yeah. And then when Hillary Clinton ran, people were so mad about how she dealt with Obama. They're like, well, I ain't voting for her. And then they didn't vote. And then guess what? We got Trump. We can't blame nobody. Yeah. And I'm not putting this all on Black folks, but I can speak to Black folks like, hey, we got to vote. Yeah. If you want to see how things can change, vote. Yeah. You're not going to change things by burning down the courthouse or the Ralph's Market. Yeah. That's not going to change. All that's going to do is make the people on the other side say, see, we need this strong law and order. Exactly. We need this strong police presence, because if they win, you better believe you're not going to get a whole lot of protesting going on in the future. They're going to stamp that out. You're not going to get whole cities of people. They'll put that down immediately.
It's going to be against the law to do that. They'll just make a law, like you said, make it against the law to gather in groups or something like that. And if you do that, you're getting your head busted, you're going to jail.
Wow.
There you go.
That's a fact.
Wow. Yeah. This is so great information. Thank you for taking the time. We are so grateful. Civil rights attorney as well as a criminal defense attorney, Mr. Michael Curls.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your time.
Tap in.